This video is intended as a guide for those wanting to start out in USPSA production division with a Glock pistol. As always, reference your USPSA rulebook. Make sure you're conforming to production rules as far as pistol size, pistol weight, that kind of stuff. And also hope you enjoy the video. If you have any questions, please post them. I'll try to respond to them either with stuff in the comments or maybe even an updated video later on. So you want to shoot your Glock in USPSA production, and you want to know what to do to the gun to improve your chances of performing better in the sport. Let's start off with sights. I recommend a set of fiber optic front, black rear, tall competition sights for your Glock. You want the fiber optic rod up front, and I'll show you later in the video what it looks like, but you want a tall competition set with a fiber optic front. The reason being is that fiber optic rod, when you're outdoors shooting a match, will glow. It's almost like having a red dot. Once you get the dot over the target, you pull the trigger. If your stance and your trigger pull is decent, you will usually hit the target. It makes for acquiring the target faster, especially under stress when you're running or moving during a match. Okay, I wanted to go ahead and give an example of a fiber optic front competition sight setup on these two Glock 34 slides. Here's the Dawson Precision. And you see how that Glock, how that fiber optic rod lights right up. And here's a set of Lowe competition fiber optic sights. They don't make these anymore, but they offer a large front dot fiber optic rod, which is for me it's a very fast sight. It's tall, it's kind of wide, but it's easy for my eyes to see. The one on the left's a little harder to see. It's so I kind of go back and forth between what I prefer. But your smaller dots tend to be a little more accurate, and your bigger dot will lend itself to better speed, in my opinion. So you can see that big dot fast and pull the trigger fast and get going quick. Having taller sights on your pistol will give you a greater field of view when you come up on a target versus your stock sights, which are very low sitting, and you only get about 180, top 180 degree field of view, and your taller sights will give you a more probably into the 200s or even 300s degree field of view when you're shooting. It just makes things faster, target acquisition's faster overall, which speed is a big part of the game in USPSA for getting your shots on target quickly. We'll go into the grip. With the Glock pistol, many add grip tape, as you can see in the picture. You can add grip tape. It's in the USPSA rulebook as to where you can stick it all. There are some limits. It's pretty generous though. With the Gen 4, you don't have to use so much grip tape. You can use it on the back strap and the front. The sides are, in my opinion, they got plenty of stippling there from the factory, so it creates you don't have to add any grip tape there. Okay, with grip tape on the Glock, on the Gen 3, you have to put in my opinion, a pretty good amount of grip tape to get it squared away as far as to stay stable in your hand. With the Gen 4, not so much. It's more piecemeal work with the grip tape, on the front and the back, with some other little places here and there. But overall, grip tape will help you keep the pistol stable in your hand, especially during summertime match shooting. You're going to have sweat on your hands. You definitely don't want the pistol moving under recoil, and your score will suffer otherwise. You want that pistol staying on target, and you want your grip solid on the gun. Also want to talk about recoil springs. Many recommend for production 9mm shooting minor power factor. They recommend a 13 pound with a steel recoil rod, and this one's from Jager products or Jager products, whichever way you say it. It's for the Gen 4. This one has a 15 pound spring. However, I haven't started using it I'm still using the stock 2-stage Gen 4 recoil spring setup. Eventually I'll probably move over to a steel rod and this modified spring. Some say a 13-pound is a better spring, a little flatter shooting. Some even use an 11-pound. It's one of those things you just have to test and see what you're comfortable with, what shoots flat for you, and what matches your speed of shooting. Some people shoot very fast and they want a little more positive slide movement versus slower slide movement. I think it's splitting hairs there at that point, but some people want the gun to run fast or run a little slower. It's just one of those things you just have to test out for yourself and with your ammunition and what you're comfortable with reliability wise. So far the stock served me pretty well, but I think I can be better served a little bit with a little lighter of a spring, and I think next year when I shoot matches I'll probably move over to a lighter spring. But right now stock's okay. Next thing's next, connector. There are several connectors on the market. It's kind of a disputed thing. Some people like the factory minus connector. I ran it. It served me well. I moved on to a Zev V4 race connector, I think is what the name is of it. Comes in the spring package. Another thing we'll go over here, let's touch on the grip plugs. I don't have one extra to show, but I guess I can show this. Here is a Gen 3 34. Sorry about the focus here. Here is a Gen 3 34. It has a grip plug, and it is allowable in production as it doesn't stick out any. Just a very small amount, which is legal for USPSA production. Basically, it covers the hole that's there on the stock Glocks, and it helps you when you reload. It's not going to get caught up under a speed or a stress-induced reload. It'll help the magazine go in a little quicker. They work. I wasn't a fan before, but now I am. They do work. I enjoy having it in the gun. It's a nice piece of insurance, I guess. And like I said, it is legal under the rules. You can reference it in the USPSA rule book. As long as they don't stick out, like make it into a beveled mag well, then it'd be like a limited gun. Since we're on it, here's a picture of grip tape on a Gen 3 34 frame. And you can see a piece of grip tape in the background. The grip tape helps tremendously out in the sun. You don't want the gun moving around in your hand when you're trying to shoot it fast or when you're trying to adjust to shoot distance targets. You want every piece of meat on the gun you can. You want it stable. You want to repeat shots. You want repeatability, and this grip tape gives you that advantage. Keeps that gun stuck to your hand. However, I will caution you, if you put too much on, sometimes when it's new, the gun can stick too much to your hand. And so when you're going to reload, move your hand maybe to hit the magazine release, sometimes your hand doesn't want to come off the gun. So just be careful. If you do put a lot of grip tape, just make sure you're comfortable with it before you go ahead and take it to a match. But the important area is the back strap, the front, up in here in the webbing where you put where your thumb or close to your thumb or where the web between your thumb and index finger will be. That's a good area of movement. It's nice to have your hand stable in there to control the recoil of the pistol. It's all about controlling recoil and keeping the meat on the gun. Okay, enough of that. As far as where to get the grip tape, you can go to like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or even some of the shooting places like Dawson or some of those offer it. Now, honestly, I recommend the industrial tape that you would get from like a hardware store versus some of the stuff that's offered out there. I have not been impressed with some of the stuff that's offered by the shooting companies when it comes to grip tape. Triggers for production. Some people will run a custom trigger that is kind of stock appearing on the outside of the gun. So far, I've been pretty well served with the stock trigger with a polished bar. Okay, so there's your trigger bar. It's been polished, kind of to a mirror. That will help when you pull the trigger. They refer to it like 25-cent trigger job. If you want to go ahead and do that, sure, do it. It works. It helps. But that's in addition to other things you need to do, in my opinion, to the pistol's trigger. Now, some will recommend just buying an aftermarket trigger. I didn't do that. I don't have an aftermarket trigger set up, but I do have some parts in there that help the stock trigger perform better, more consistently. Right here is the 34s will come with a minus connector. This is a polished minus connector. Eventually, I transitioned over to a Zev Technologies spring and V4 race connector kit, which helps a lot. It will come with a reduced power striker spring, a trigger spring that's increased power. It helps you pull the trigger, and then there's a little safety plunger spring in there that will ease the initial trigger pull. I will caution you, with a lighter striker spring, you might see some light primer strikes with like say Russian ammo or some of the commercial ammo with harder primers out there. So watch out for that. You will get light primer strikes no matter what you do with a lighter striker spring in combination with hard primers. Now, with Federal and a clean striker channel, it's pretty reliable. I've shot thousands of rounds and only had one light primer strike using Federal ammunition. So it's pretty reliable. I don't worry about it. It rarely happens. Like I said, I've had it once happen with Federal ammo over thousands of rounds this past 6 months of shooting USPSA. But shooting Wolff or your Russian counterpart type 9mm ammo, multiple light primer strikes. But it does offer the advantage of a lighter trigger pull, and that's what we need. Another thing that touch on here, these adjustable trigger stops. This is recommended to me by a local shooter, and didn't really click into my head till later on. This basically keeps the trigger bar in the Glock. Once it does release the striker, it stops the trigger from traveling rearward. So basically, you get a faster trigger reset, but also your repeated shots are going to be more accurate on target, essentially, because you don't have the over travel and your finger turning the gun as the trigger over travels from the stock position. So this will clean up. This product will clean up the travel of rearward past the sear release or the striker release of the trigger. These are highly recommended. Make your follow-up shots faster and more accurate. So like $20. So what the hell, right? Get one, put it in. Just make sure you have it adjusted correctly. Usually the factory adjustment they send it with is pretty good. Don't get too, you don't want to over adjust and keep your trigger from releasing the sear, and then you have problems. Another thing I recommend is for any Glock, Gen 3 or Gen 4, get an extended magazine release. It's allowed in production with a 17 or a 34. You have to stick with the factory extended release, but they work pretty well. Another thing I recommend, just off to the side here, if your Glock has a lot of rounds through it, don't learn the hard way during the match. Go ahead and buy a new extractor spring. It takes like 2 seconds to change it out. Pull off, your back plate of the slide there. Put your new extractor spring in. If you're up in the thousands of rounds with your Glock before you start competing, go ahead and switch that out. You want a positive extraction. You don't want to find out the hard way during the time stage that you're getting weak extraction and you had a stovepipe. Glocks will malfunction with enough rounds through them. You will wear parts out shooting competition. It's just the way it is. Another thing that's not really touched on a lot in some of the videos is magazines. The factory magazine from Glock's an outstanding magazine. However, I do like an extended bumper pad or base pad, if you will, on the bottom of the gun. It makes it easier to grab the magazine out of your mag carrier when you're switching mags. I also recommend that you take a body shop style 600 to a 1000 grit sandpaper and essentially polish the magazines with the sandpaper. And it helps them slide out when you hit the release. They fall right out. So it worked real well for me. I had a problem with sticking magazines. You'd hit the button, the magazine would stay in the gun. This will take off some of the imperfection of the molding process. Smooths things out, but it helps. It's an easy tip to do. It's easy to remember. and it takes about 5 minutes to do about 5 or 6 mags. So get it done. Works. Okay, one thing I wanted to touch on before we finished up on this video was aftermarket barrels in the Glock 34 or Glock guns in general. From what I gather, I haven't had a chance to fully test this out yet, but the main reason people go to the aftermarket barrels is the ability to shoot reloads reliably. These offer a little tighter lockup over stock into the breech face area of the slide. They also offer a polished feed ramp, so it might aid in reliability a little bit. The KKM seems to be the most highly regarded aftermarket Glock barrel available, so if you're a reloader and you're going to shoot production, this is probably the barrel brand to go after, with at least with the best reputation. So, like I said, I haven't had a chance to really put it through its paces, but it is definitely a quality piece of work, and they look cool, so that always helps. Anyways, I figured I'd throw that in the video. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully it was informative to you and will help you with your competition shooting in USPSA production division. If you have any comments or questions or concerns, please write them in the comment section, and hopefully I'll be able to reply to them.